Edesia was set up with the mission to treat and prevent malnutrition. And malnutrition is an enormous problem that's killing up to 3 million children a year. And that's something that's completely preventable, and we can do something really quite simple to solve that. And so that's what Edesia is all about, trying to fix that problem that's so widespread at the moment. I founded this because of a bunch of different things. First, I have children, and so children is an interest of mine. My father's side of the family is from Tanzania, and I have a business background. So it's kind of those three things together that allowed me to come up with this idea of solving the crisis of malnutrition through a business solution. I realized through touring through East Africa doing research instead of traveling for fun for the first time was really eye-opening from a different perspective. And to see that there were children dying from something that you didn't need to be a doctor in order to figure out why. We didn't need any research to figure out what the cure was to malnutrition. It's food. And that was such a simple concept that as a mother, I could understand that must be devastating to lose a child over something so simple. And because I didn't have any experience in this area, I thought it was something that I could figure out how to put together if we just had the will to do it. And really, in my mind, the cost of inaction was so great. And my husband often said to me, "You don't really have time right now. We have a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and 2 6-year-olds. This is not really the time to start a new business." And I said, "Well, you never really have enough spare time, but seeing that you could make a difference in such a simple way," and I thought if I waited 5 years or 10 years, how many lives would be lost? To me, it was a no-brainer to start as soon as I possibly could, which was right then. So since we started almost 6 years ago, there used to be 5 million children a year who would die from malnutrition, and now the global statistics state 3. And I think that shows a lot of progress over the last 6 years. And in fact, in a lot of these issues, just poverty in general, we've made great strides in the world. And while you might think it's doom and gloom, a lot of these trends are heading in the right direction. And that's something that I get really excited about. To actually see that there's been a change globally is really remarkable. Now, clearly there's a lot more work to be done. Those are the most severe cases. There's 150 million who are suffering from undernutrition in some form, maybe not the most severe. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we've started with the most severe, and we're working our way all the way back to moderate malnutrition, and prevention really is our end goal. This year alone, in 2015, we will have sent out enough ready-to-use foods to reach 1 million children. And that's not just for one day, it's for a full treatment. So for the most severe cases, that can be about an average of 7 weeks. And when we're doing prevention, that's actually a much longer period of time. So 1 million children for a complete treatment that will rehabilitate them back to healthy life. And we're really looking at trying to deliver micronutrients that help build their brains and bodies. Because if we don't intervene during those critical windows of opportunity, then it's irreversible. We can't get that back later, and the damage is really permanent. So by intervening, that impact is lifelong. It will allow children to be able to learn in school, to get jobs, and it really, at the end of the day, impacts GDP overall for our country. So these nutritional interventions are really critical in so many different ways. So the vision for the new factory really is to continue what we're doing, but also add a completely new component, which is this innovation center, and really using the expertise that we've developed over the last few years to look at new populations that are not currently being reached. That could be more work with adults with HIV, it could be school children, not only internationally but domestically as well. Also looking at pregnant and lactating mothers. These are all critical intervention points where where delivering nutrition can really have a large impact. And so we want to see all the different areas where we can look at where there is a gap and if we can develop a new product that can work in the field effectively. I heard the stat this morning on the radio on the way in that 1 in 8 in Rhode Island is food insecure. And while we have safety nets here in the WIC program and the food banks, we want to see how we can work with those programs that are in place. And while it might be something as simple as developing a regular peanut butter that's cheaper than what the food bank is currently buying now, so that they can purchase more for less. Then we're looking for ideas like that of how we can work together just with our own community right here within walking distance of our factory. And we will now have the capacity to do that, whereas in the past we had to deal with the emergencies of the emergencies. So wherever the worst famines were, or a terrible earthquake, or a civil war, that's where we were only able to reach. And so now with the new expanded capacity, we have the ability to branch out and look at helping those in our own backyard. Yeah, I mean, I think that nutrition education is certainly a very important topic. It's not something that we have done to date. When we talk about education, the people we're educating right now that we spend a lot of time doing work with is advocacy within the U.S. government and trying to impact it at a policy level. And so whether internationally, that's why you should use a product like what we make, what the science behind it is, why it's and how it's been proven to work effectively and cost effectively more than other interventions. At the national level, looking at how we can work potentially with school feeding programs in the U.S. to check that protein box that they're required to do in schools. And if there's something that we can provide that's healthy, that's very cognizant of the obesity problem that we have here in the U.S., and create something that is a simple snack that traditionally kids like. Also being aware that there's peanut allergy complications here in the U.S., but that protein is tough to deliver to kids and so important that maybe we create a way to check that protein box, get one of our products into school lunch programs, or at least as a snack that could be an alternative to a candy bar, so that we can help improve our own malnutrition problem of obesity here in the United States. I think one of my favorite things to do is go out into the field. That's why we started this, after all, is really talking to mothers and their children and understanding their stories and how they got here, and how oftentimes they feel like they have failed if they have a child who's severely malnourished, and that we can deliver a solution to really quite simply fix that. Is a great thing to experience. And when you are sitting in those malnutrition wards, and the kids and the moms are getting the training on how to use the products, and to watch one open up a sachet and take their first bite is then nothing but smiles. And so that's really great to see them literally coming back to life and lifting up their heads for the first time to take a drink of water and have a first try of PlumpyNut. I could sit there all day. It's really magical to watch that transformation. And when the kids come back a couple weeks later, you really can't even recognize them. So I'm always looking for a little earring or a little braid or something that shows me that was the same kid who was here before. Because their face, their eyes, everything about them is almost unrecognizable, which is really an incredible thing to witness. Okay, so this is our before and after picture. And what you can see on this side is that she's laying down. She doesn't have the strength to sit up on her own. Also, her hair is light, it almost turns a blonde color when there's a lack of nutrients. Her skin is breaking away, and just her overall, obviously, the look of her. And then this is one box, or 7 weeks later, of PlumpyNut. You'll see, first of all, she's sitting up by herself. She obviously looks more happy. Her skin color has changed, her hair color, and everything about her has changed to the point that she's almost not recognizable except for this little braid sticking out of her head. So I put this picture next to where the boxes come out on the production lines, because to me every box represents this transformation, and it's important for us to remember that fact every time one goes past the window. So Edesia is always working in the places that are in the headlines or about to be in the headlines. So obviously the Syrian refugee crisis is front and center. We've been shipping there for the last 3 years and continue to deliver products there to refugees, specifically children under the age of 2. Secondly, maybe a headline that hasn't quite made it yet to the newspapers is Ethiopia and in East Africa, a drought due to the El Nino weather patterns that are among us. So while we see droughts and floods even in our own country, what this does in East Africa is potentially the path to a potential famine. And so thankfully, we've learned from experiences over the years, and the UN groups that we work with, World Food Program and UNICEF, are starting to plan ahead. So we actually made product over the last 3 months for a warehouse in Kenya, and that is sitting there now in Kenya, and some more of it's on its way, but it's pre-positioned there so that the minute a famine is declared, or before it's declared, hopefully, we're able to get products right out into the field. Back in 2011, we lost thousands of lives because we waited until it hit the headlines, and by then it was too late. And so this year, I hope that we are much better prepared, and that when a crisis like this happens, we're ready. We're also still sending to West Africa, to the post-Ebola countries. Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia are still, it takes many, many months or years to recover from something as devastating as that. And so we are still continuing to send products to West Africa in response to the Ebola outbreak. This is for pregnant and lactating mothers, and what actually the two of these do together is we're looking at addressing the first 1,000 days of life. And what that is the time period from conception to age 2. And that is the most critical window of opportunity for the mothers to deliver healthy babies that aren't born with major birth defects. And then also breastfeeding, and then following on with complementary feeding, so that the nutrition level is high during those critical first 1,000 days. Part of that is nutritional education, but then also, how to use these kinds of products when, and also how to get back off of them, because this is not a long-term solution for sure. This is something to just intervene at these really tough parts, such as the hunger gap, for example. So that's a time when there's the harvest is, say, 2 months away, and you've run out of savings and you've run out of food supplies, and you'll see a huge spike in the malnutrition wards of kids coming in severely malnourished. And so they need just a little bit of time and extra food and nutrition to get back on their feet, get out of the malnutrition wards until the harvest comes. It could be during a natural disaster. It could be because of loss of a parent. But the foods that we make aren't intended to replace traditional foods in any way. So part of the healthcare worker's job is to do nutritional education and let people know that this is a temporary solution, but enough to deliver enough micronutrients to really rehabilitate, but then an exit program is needed as well to continue on that path of good nutrition as well, to keep them healthy along the way. There's all different levels when there is a crisis of food insecurity. So you could, if it was a natural disaster, well, you're not severely malnourished instantly. You're food insecure, so you're having trouble getting food. So grains and traditional foods are really necessary at that time. Only then do they identify certain children who are either moderately or severely malnourished, and only those kids are getting the products that we make here. Everything else can really come from markets or traditional food chains. We want to find as many ways that we can bring people in and make them part of our family. And if we can let people know what's going on around the world and know that there's a problem and a solution, and we're looking for people to help support our mission. And it is really quite inexpensive to be able to help just one child. And so for $50, that can buy an entire box of PlumpyNut and deliver a 7-week treatment that can completely rehabilitate and change a child in just a few weeks. You know, we really need supporters to be able to help us carry out our mission. And we're working around the clock 24 hours a day to get as much of this out into the field as we can. But we want to start a volunteer program. We want to have recurring donors. And we want to have people feel like they're part of our family and really part of making a difference. And I think the most exciting part is the products that we make are so tangible and that you can literally see a marked difference in these kids in such a short time that you know exactly where your money's going to and you know exactly what it did. And you know, we encourage everyone to get involved in as many ways as they can, and we welcome people to come in for tours, learn more, and donate if they're able to. Okay. So we were running a capital campaign, which we needed $3.5 million in order to buy equipment and all of the components that we need to make the factory work. Currently, we are still looking for $1.2 million, and that's specifically for this innovation component, which is 3 parts. We have a test kitchen where we're able to test new products at the kitchen level, make sure they taste right, that they look right, till it gets to the level where we have a test pilot line, which will do small-scale new products that mimic the large machines that we have. And then number 3 is a quality lab that's able to test and check nutritional outcomes and composition and things like that. So the $1.2 million that we need is to fund that 3 areas of the Innovation Center. You know, secondly, while we say that there's a capacity for 2 million, really there's unlimited capacity. We have the space there to do 4 times that if we wanted to. But really the missing link is the funding. And if we had unlimited funds, then clearly we could continue to buy more equipment and reach more children. And so the only reason that we state 2 million as a goal is because we need to ensure that the funding and the programming is in place as well. And without those 2 things, you can't have a complete program that's working. Have this floor space and even the land to be able to continue expanding, and really the sky is the limit, and so it depends on the amount of funds that we're able to raise. If we're able to generate money from a huge campaign, you know, we could quadruple that, if not more. So it really depends on the will that we have, and the energy and the resources that we can collect in order to dictate how many millions of children we're able to reach. $50, and you won't even recognize the child who's unable to hold up her head, unable to sit up under her own power, and go to sitting up, to smiling, to having bright eyes, running around like a 1 or 2 year old should. You know, that's our goal, is to get these kids back up on their feet and set them forward with the building blocks that they need to not only survive, but thrive. I mean, sometimes you wonder why the mothers have such large families and why they have so many children. And really the very simple answer is they know that they're going to lose a few of those. And that's a concept and a thought that probably we can't even understand what that must be like, to know in advance that this is possible, that you could lose 2 or 3 of your children. And but that's a harsh reality, and what I would like to see is a world where those mothers don't have to go through that heartache. It would lead to smaller family sizes to begin with, and it's just, I couldn't imagine, and I'm sure no one else can, losing a child over something so silly as not having proper food and nutrition is, in this day and age, is just completely unacceptable. And so if there's something that we can do to prevent that grief and that unnecessary death, then I think we should do everything in our power to do that.